Okay, Alex.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Oh, am I a guest?
Yeah.
This is yours now?
This is mine now. No, I'm kidding. From A to X episode. Who gives a fuck?
Depends on how you're cutting these.
Yeah. No.
They're just for TikTok clips. That's the only thing that sells nowadays.
Truly. Yeah, I got a guy who I've hired on.
Oh, really?
That's doing it. It is a buddy of mine.
Oh, okay.
But
He's clipping.
I have I have to send him. He's cheap, so I have to send him like timestamps.
Oh, okay.
And then have him make a clip on that.
Yeah.
So if you're ever gonna say something clippable, you got to make it like, or you got to note the time or something so that I can send it off to Louis.
Shout out to Louis. We're putting his Instagram handle right now.
I don't know if he must have one.
We're putting we're putting his socials right now.
Yeah,
It's all on the screen.
I'll throw it out to my man.
He's putting a visual right now.
Fuck, I still got to work on his resume. Anyway, Alex, I have two topics.
Okay.
That I came up with. One a little bit more serious.
Oh, okay.
Kind of, but the other one is what I sent you earlier today.
Oh, yeah, about
the lawyer. So that's the only things.
What aspect of it?
So the only thing I'm interested in, I'm interested in your hot take on this, is the degree of separation, the reasonable degree of separation between an employee's
social media
/ private life,
okay,
and the impact that has on their employment.
Yeah.
I think this varies on a spectrum personally, in the sense that, like, if you're like a PR manager, it probably matters a lot more to have like a clean social media account.
Yeah.
Or just like a clean private presence, or public presence, I should say.
Yeah.
Versus, if you're an installer, doing data at like construction sites or whatever, probably matters a whole lot less. But I'm curious as to where you draw the line in the employee-employer interaction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, like I said, I think that, like, social media is a public platform, right? So, like, anything that you do or say or post or anything like that is essentially public, right?
Yeah, subject to
public, just like if you were sending out and you were in the mall,
right,
and saying it out loud in front of a group of people, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that you're gonna, like, you have to be like you're gonna take the consequences of doing that if you do it on social media, whether you did it on public or not. If you're posting your ding dong online, posting your wiener on the internet, or your vagina, inclusive, or your, whatever, and it, and it gets shared, everybody can see it. Mm-hmm. You're putting it in a public place, and how your employer responds to that, I mean, it depends. I think if you're saying something that, like, if you're saying you're doing something that could negatively affect the business, I can understand from the business's standpoint that being like, hey, we should probably let this person go. Mm-hmm. But again, it really depends on what you're, it depends on like how that would even affect the client.
This is not only the coldest and
now, but wait, this is what I'm going to say next. Okay. Now, people who see something like that online and then grab it and be like, oh, I'm sending this to their employer, are bitches. That's a whole move. And you're a snitch, and you trifling. Like, the fact that you would be like, see something that would like, oh, and then I'm going to go hunt down where this person works and then send that to them and be like, try to get them fired. You're fucking gay. Like, you're stupid.
Okay, that's more interesting because you just proceeded with the boringest, coldest take known to mankind.
Right.
That's a little more interesting. And it makes me question the honesty with which you expressed the previous statement about like the degree of separation and reasonability when it comes to all of that. Well, I feel like the problem it sounds like you're saying like, well, I guess it depends on how big your audience is. Like you get some random clip of someone.
No, I don't think it depends on how big your audience is. I think if you post it anywheres, like I think if you have no followers, you have nothing. You know, like that happened to me. Like I said the N-word on Facebook on someone's post. It was a stupid post, and I thought that my joke to it by saying the N-word was funny. It was relevant to what they were saying.
Okay.
And then some other person in the comment section screenshotted that and then sent it to my employer. It saw like they went to my page, figured out where I was working, and sent it to my employer. Screenshotted like, "Hey, you have an employee who's posting this kind of stuff online. I don't know if this would be like this is something that you wanted your business associated with." Now, they messaged the employee. They messaged the employer through Facebook. And I was the admin of all media and social media and all that kind of communication. So I was able to,
immediately delete.
You're right. I was able to be like, oh, okay, thank you for, bringing this to our attention, and then delete that shit. And then, but it was like, what the fuck? Like that bitch move, super bitch move. Like, how do you have time for that?
Honestly,
yeah,
I'm gonna say this. It just sounds like you're salty, bro.
I am salty.
Like you got caught with your hand in the cookie jar, and you're mad because your brother, or not even your brother, just some rando.
Yeah, it's just some random person
that saw you in your kitchen. Suddenly yelled out and was like, "Hey, your son is stealing cookies," Yeah. I feel like equally in the same regard that you're saying that like this is a public platform, like everything you do should be subject to public scrutiny. Like part of that public scrutiny is people's response to it.
Sure.
And if people's response to it is like, "Hey, I don't know like if this is a reflection of the kind of values that you want in your company."
Okay.
You're not sold on this.
No, I agree that the person like they like that is one of the consequences of that happening. I'm just saying people who do that are bitches. Like you're a bitch if you did that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you have every right to do that, and you posting something publicly on. I'm sorry, guys. The set has fallen apart.
I don't know. Yeah. So,
so.
Sorry about that.
I mean, if you post something on like, that's one of the consequences of that. But what I'm saying is that you're a bitch if you screenshot that shit and then send it to your to the person's employer. Like I can never even think of a time where I would have done that, or even thought to do that. But I think also,
I'm just imagining like, you see, like I'm imagining like, Hitler, works at Tesla, and he publishes Mein Kampf,
okay,
and then, but nobody gives a fuck. But you come across Mein Kampf, like on Amazon, whatever. And you're kind of like, damn, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And so you go search up Adolf Hitler, and on his LinkedIn, it's like, head of social media at Tesla.
Okay. I'm not going to be like, hey, do you guys know that this guy wrote this book? Wow. I'll let that play out.
There's no. Is there a threshold there where, like, what if you saw someone post on their social media, like them literally killing a person, and it was like one of those, like it was like a YouTube short that gets recommended to you, and you're like the one of the guinea pigs. So there's 0 views, 0 likes, 0 comments.
Yeah.
You see this person post like them literally strangling somebody to death.
Okay.
And then you're like, what the fuck? And then you dig up, they find out where they work, and you're like, yo, like, you got, like, this guy's a murderer, literally, like.
That's not my business. That's not my business.
You would say that somebody who did pursue that course of action would be a bitch.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of a bitch. I mean, if it was like, we'll let if you're the investigator, you're like a cop, you're the investigator on the job, investigating this murder. I mean, then you can find that, figure that out. But me, nah, it's just not my style. Not my style.
Okay.
Not my style. So yeah. I mean, like I said, but I think also too, that's just, I'm from the, I like the old school internet. I like the, I like the 4chan, anonymous posting. Everything you do is anonymous.
Yeah,
and
but
all that kind of shit. And
I, and to be perfectly, clear.
Yeah.
I guess I should draw a line here, which is that I think doxing is a bitch move.
Yeah.
I definitely, I'm 100% on board with you there.
But
where someone who is more or less, I mean, obviously people suck at it, but more or less doing their quote unquote best to be anonymous online and in their social media presence and everything. People who get exposed in some regard and then are then subsequently like fired because they were doxed online. I think that's definitely a bitch move or whatever.
Right.
But I'm talking about people who who are, like the guy from the video I sent you was wearing their company polo in his profile picture. And it's like, all right, dude, like you're tempting fate.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's pretty dumb. I mean, to do that. And I mean, that was the mistake that I made, that I had any kind of association to my, and really that was just because, it was like, I hadn't been on Facebook in a long time. And, it was late at night and I was checking in on my Facebook profile that I hadn't like looked at in like a year. And previous to that, I was always like using like, fake accounts and stuff like that. And now it was actually on my regular account. And so I was doing fake account activity, that should have been done on the,
on the DL,
on the fake account. And so it was like a slip up on my part, like obviously. And
you're just mad someone called you out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your self-awareness is startling.
Yeah, I mean, I can know this. Oh, yeah, I fucked up and did something bad, and somebody called me out for it. Doesn't mean they're not a bitch. I mean, they can still be. You can still be like, "Oh, you're a bitch for that one," But yeah. So I don't get it. I don't know why you'd waste your time. But it's like in like the murder scenarios, I mean, that's extreme, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm just
saying something stupid online.
I'm trying to figure out what crosses your threshold where you would no longer be a bitch for reporting someone's social media activities to their place of employment.
Yeah, I see. Like, obviously, I think if it was like if it was the line would maybe being crossed is if those activities were being committed, like if they were bad activities that were being committed at work on the job site, then it probably should be. Then it probably like Burger King foot lettuce, kind of thing.
Ugh,
That person probably, that person probably should be reported. You know what I mean? It'd be the same thing. Like if you walked into a restaurant and you saw somebody working at the restaurant and you saw them fucking up the food or something like that, you probably want to report that.
Yeah. I will say, I almost 100% agree. My concern actually is...
And if you saw somebody murdering somebody, you maybe should Maybe you should contact the authorities. What are you going to contact their employer and be like, hey, I saw this video of this dude murdering somebody and I saw he works at your place. Maybe you should fire him.
Well, what if like the murder took place at his workplace? You know, he was like
was he on break?
The office. that is what I immediately thought of. I was like, the only problem I have with that, like the denomination that you're making, is that it, for whatever reason, it like, I don't know how wrong it is, but it just makes this connection in my mind that like the social media that you post on while you're on the clock belongs to your company in some way. And I'm not a huge fan of that proposition. Yeah. But also I'm kind of like, I'm definitely like, that if like you see this all the time with construction workers, people who post like all kinds of, you know, OSHA violations and everything else. And I'm kind of like, I don't know if you should be posting this. And realistically, like all of the surrounding activities of this like recording taking place kind of subject you to a different standard than I would place on anyone else. But also like the company doesn't own that. Yeah. You know? So I don't know. It's a weird line. It's a weird line to cross, draw.
It is, and it's a kind of a tricky thing, just because like, especially too with like how much social media like encourages that kind of stuff. You know, like the trend, the devious lick trend. Oh, God. You know, where you had kids vandalizing the schools and stuff like that, stealing like toilets and stuff. That shit's hilarious. Don't get me wrong. Super funny. Very, very funny. Wild. But also, you're posting yourself committing a crime.
Yeah, I do wonder when.
But social media like encourages that, because those videos are so funny.
Yeah,
and they get so
a lot
entertaining,
of engagement, right?
That like, I mean, committing a crime and putting it on video and sharing that, you're gonna blow up.
Yeah, I do wonder what like the line is in terms of like, you know, the whole system of like we pay you for your time is already a little weird, you know, in the sense of like, how do you own somebody's time? Like, how do you compensate it fairly for like somebody's time? Like, it's kind of just a weird concept, but meaning
like the movie with starring
In Time with
Timberlake, Justin Timberlake,
and his mother Olivia Munn.
That's right.
A wild pairing. There's zero chance. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Was he ever in a movie after that? Or was that like his movie debut and then end?
He must have been.
I mean, right?
Oh, he was. I'm pretty sure. No, I want to say he was he did voice work for worthless cartoons
or something.
Trolls or something.
Yeah, but no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like
as a lead man,
lead man acting in a action drama.
I don't think that happened at all.
Sci-fi movie.
Which
he's not a bad actor.
To be clear, he was like, that movie is pretty terrible, but he's not a terrible part of it.
No, he's okay in the movie.
You know what the wildest fact I know about that movie, and the one that like blows me away, is that do you know who the director of photography is?
No.
It's Roger Deakins.
Really?
Yeah. That was Roger Deakins' first fully digital film. And
interesting.
You know, for what it is, it looks pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, it looked. I was getting clips from that movie on my YouTube Shorts for a bit.
Yeah. Like screenplay, garbage, dialogue, everything else. Yeah. Concept, execution. Yeah. It's all mediocre at best.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a whole movie based on like, bro, what if like instead of you got paid in money, you got paid in time, bro.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's as far as the concept goes.
And then that's it. They're like, get Justin on the phone. He's gonna be he wants in on this movie.
We need something with as the same amount of depth as this movie's screenplay. So
we're gonna get Justin. They probably called They probably called, like Bruce Willis. They probably called Jude Law. They probably called everybody, and they're like, I'm working on something else. And they were like, well, maybe Justin Timberlake. I heard, I
can't imagine that movie being anything but built around him. In the sense of like, people like studio executives kind of like coming across a screenplay going like, oh wow, this is a useful tool, and then the next
like
slide,
finding a movie like Justin wants to get into a movie.
Yeah,
find
exactly.
him a movie.
Yeah. Like he's either the slide before the presentation or the slide right after.
Yeah, Justin Timberlake.
Where the studio executives go like, oh,
yeah, Justin.
Hang on, we have a potential here.
We can get him in the movie. That or like everybody else was busy.
Probably.
And they were having lunch. He's like, last week I was having lunch with Justin and his girlfriend, and he mentioned wanting to do a movie.
Yeah,
he'd be perfect for this, I think. Will Smith was busy. Will Smith was in every movie back then.
And it was 2008, I think.
Oh yeah, I guess that was a little earlier. Early 2000s, Will Smith was.
Oh,
he was in everything. He was trying to be in it.
Yeah,
he was supposed to be in everything.
Yeah, post Wild Wild West. That whole era.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He was supposed to be in The Matrix.
He was. Thank God he turned that down.
That would have been a totally different movie.
Yeah. Imagine the timeline
where Will Smith was in
Will Smith was Neo. The reason that would be the biggest reason that would be terrible is that I feel like without that you don't get like superstar Keanu Reeves, and superstar Keanu Reeves is awesome.
Yeah,
he's like one of Hollywood's best.
Yeah.
Representatives in that sense.
Yeah, he's not a good actor, but he's not a very good actor.
He is.
You can be honest. I'm just saying. People hate to hear it, but it's true. He's not that good of an actor. He's great in his movies. He's awesome in his movies.
He has so much screen presence.
Yes.
He's got the charisma.
Yeah.
The energy, it translates.
Yeah. No, I 100% believe.
When he is voicing dialogue, expressing emotions, and just generally like being in the drama of things, there's a stiltedness there.
Yeah.
But
he's in it. Like he's
giving it his all.
He's 100% in the character. Yeah. He's 100% there. He's present. He's all for it.
And to be fair, like in all the roles that matter, he does a great job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this, like the number one example to me clearly that speaks to, maybe acting isn't like just being Philip Seymour Hoffman or something like that, or Gary Oldman. Maybe it's not always that, but a derivation of it is Point Break. Point Break is an incredible example of just kind of breaking of the norms surrounding general movie theory as it relates to like the drama and the essence of it. It's such a wild movie. I don't understand how that movie got made, what constituent elements, like how that all came together, because it's directed by a woman, Catherine Bigelow, I believe, but it's one of the most masculine movies you'll ever watch in your life. It's like one of the perfect encapsulations of like man, like men culture and like brohood, that's ever been put on screen. And Keanu, he sells it perfectly.
Yeah,
he's exactly what that movie needed, opposite to Patrick Swayze, who is also acting his heart out, and they're perfect. They're just perfect. I mean, that movie is a good movie. That movie is perfect. Him kicking the dog in the middle of the chase is it's classic cinema. I don't know how else to put it other than it is classic cinema.
It is a classic cinema movie. Yeah. I just like, I love The Matrix. I love all of them.
Yeah.
I love all three of them.
Yeah.
I know people shit on those movies, like the what are they? Reloaded and Revolutions and Reloaded. Mm-hmm. I think Reloaded is the last one, right? Or Revolutions.
I think Reloaded is the second. Yeah.
As a kid, they were the freaking coolest movies ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like freaking amazing, and so that kind of holds over. Now as an adult, when I watch him, you're kind of like, okay, I can kind of see people kind of thought this shit was stupid, but it still just hits. And like the action and the atmosphere and all that kind of stuff was so well done.
Yeah.
That it gets, action movies now are still copying shit that The Matrix did.
Oh yeah. They set the standard.
In the second movie, the car chase scene, I mean, you had never seen anything like that before,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, your pants were off on on the floor. You were so amazed.
I mean, today we can watch like Mad Max, Fury Road, and be like, and to see that to the nth degree or whatever. Right. But like, back then, it was the largest continuous road set ever built. Yeah, for a movie,
and you had dudes,
it was like a mile. It was over a mile stretch. Yeah. Of roadway,
and they're blowing up cars and fucking that shit was awesome.
It's great. The only problem with those two movies, the second and the third, is the screenplays just suck. Yeah, but other than that, honestly, they're great movies. Yeah, and the first movie is perfect.
The first movie is.
I just call it Point Break perfect, but I think that The Matrix deserves a tier on its own. It
really does.
It is. Not only is it classic cinema, it is movie making at its peak.
And I love too how like it's one of those movies that like is so like has this like futuristic vision, right?
Yeah.
Like this, but like not like, flying cars and shit, but like, like this like future, like styling to it, like this realistic, gritty future. And, but also is so incredibly dated. Like when you're watching it, like when Neo is running around in the very beginning, when he's still Mr. Anderson and he's talking on the cell phone, the little phone with the little, pull down little thing and then the antenna, and he has to like, he's talking on it and he's running through the office. You're like, oh, that shit's so
the payphone that she uses to escape in the opening scene.
They have to use payphones to get anywhere and all that kind of stuff because they need a hard line or something. Yeah, they need a landline to jack in. They're using like XLR cables in their heads. Yeah, that shit.
So good,
so freaking good. And in that first movie, too. I mean, even chills thinking about it in like the bank scene where he comes in, he's in the vest.
Oh, the lobby.
And he's got the lobby and he's got the two bags and then he puts them on there and sets off and he's like, what do you got in there? And he opens it up. And it's just fucking guns. And he pulls them out and just starts shooting. And then he opens up his trench coat and he's got guns and magazines. And then the shooting, it's like blowing the tiling and shit off the wall.
So good.
Dude. It like, again, as a kid, it was
as an adult, dude.
As an adult still.
Dude, it's filmmaking.
Back then, that movie came out like 1999. Mm-hmm. I believe. Back then, watching that shit, I can't imagine.
It's so many revolutionary techniques in one film. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Like the Wachowskis were on another level.
Directed by a woman, too.
That is true. I don't know what it is. These women directors just have something in them. The things that like this, the things that stand out in my mind is the shot of Trinity in the beginning where it swings around her. Yeah. It stops and does a 180 degrees to follow her kick. And the fact that not only do I know how that's made, but that's still how it's done today. Yeah. Like the shot in Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows. Yeah. The second movie, also great movie. The same way they did that is the same way they do the rotating shot in the forest when they're dodging the cannon fire and everything. It's just a lineup of cameras that are set off in sequence, and it's just like, just so brilliant. I don't know how you could, like, it's just like, how do you come up with this genius? I guess that we'll transition to a topic that actually isn't just fucking gushing over movies.
Yeah,
but it's kind of like leads me into what you said today and what I've been thinking about, which is the 0.001% of people who are just exceptional in some way, and how they are truly the drivers of society in the sense of, the innovators and everybody else is pretty much just like there to maintain, if possible. Like, do your best to maintain, because like at least 20% of the population is doing their best to destroy it.
Yeah.
Right.
They're acting against it. Entropy is hard at work.
Yeah. And it's not even that they're conscious of it. They just suck so bad at whatever it is they're doing that they can't contribute meaningfully. And so I'm thinking about this in relation to how to interact with the world at large as a product of like recognizing that in some ways, I like to believe, this is the way that I tend to like interact with this concept, which is that I believe fundamentally that everybody has, for the most part, like something of that 0.001%.
Sure.
That is capable of moving society forward in some, in some way, even if it's not that significant, or whatever the case is, and in some ways, like it's very like I don't know if fatalistic would be like the term, but it's very like expedient and not very human to think about things insofar as ignoring the process, and just kind of wanting to get to, it's fun to say like The Matrix is an amazing movie and it has all these revolutionary techniques, but we wouldn't recognize any of that if some French guy back in the 1920s wasn't all of a sudden realizing, like, oh, like these moving pictures, they have this effect, and they're not thinking about how to film a jumping crane kick.
Right. You had to get to that process.
You had to get to the end of that the sausage, the how the sausage gets made. And so it's not very human to think about things in terms of like the expediency with which, certain people make things versus other people, like the entropy runners of the world. But in saying that, I do have to question if there's there's a very obvious portion of the population that are exceptional.
Sure.
Right? Because for a variety of reasons that they're front and center. They have a global presence.
Yeah.
Those are the obvious ones.
Right.
Right. I'm curious. What how do you meaningfully interact with others insofar as for you and your process? How do you meaningfully interact with others such that you're responsibly engaging with both society, but also, this notion of human exceptionality as a kind of rule? Otherwise you get there's a lot of nihilism there. Yet to be unexplored.
I mean, right. I tend to think too that like everybody's got something that like everybody's got probably something that they're like exceptional at, and some of those things are probably like more impactful than other things. You know what I mean?
At scale, yeah.
Yeah, at scale. Like obviously you know, if you have somebody who's an incredible, the best League of Legends player, I mean, they're top, they're the best.
Yeah.
Everything they do, like the shit that they've done is what set the groundwork for other players. Like they write the meta, right?
Yeah.
That is going to have that has no impact in, like nowadays, because video games are such a big market, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was going to say that's kind of a bad example because there's a lot of money there that gets wrapped up in that whole process.
If you were the best StarCraft player, back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to be done there.
There was nothing to be done.
I was actually going to use the example of if you were the best nurse.
Sure.
It fundamentally, you have a massive impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
Because of how good you are at your job. But at scale, you probably you're only able to interact with so many people. And I'm thinking of a floor nurse, of someone who actually works in
right. You impact a lot
unit.
of people's lives, but directly.
Right.
For whatever it is.
But proportionally speaking, the just as a product of the nature of the work, there's only so many people you can lay your hands on.
Right. Should have been a doctor. You got some real impact.
I'm thinking about it in the sense of one of the best qualities of a nurse is the capacity for an exceptional level of empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such that you have a real connection with your patients and you're able to provide care for them that is wholly individualistic with them. Well, yeah, if you're a good nurse, right?
I know some fucking
my wife was a nurse, and she hated everything.
I mean, I don't. It's not a job that I would like to do.
Yeah, it sounds terrible. I mean, she worked at literally one of the largest hospitals in the world, MD Anderson, right? And then went to work at a small oncology clinic afterwards.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that they're worlds apart in terms of scale and everything else, the people are just unbelievable how people end up in this line of work when they're so exceptionally poor at it.
Yeah. Well, because I'm going to say something that's going to piss off nurses.
Oh no.
Because I was ranting about this the other day to my wife.
Listen, I might be able to sign off on this being the spouse.
It's a fucking easy job. It's an easy job. It's an easy job. There's aspects of it that are difficult, for sure, just like any job. But it's an easy ass job. The hardest part of the job is dealing with people, is dealing with other people and having to do the dealing with people. And now, obviously, this is excluding if you were a ER nurse in fucking Detroit or something like that, But for majority of nursing jobs, it's shit's easy. The hard parts are having to clean up people's shit. That's
technically not even a nurse's job, technically speaking.
Yeah, that'd be a tech.
In a well-managed hospital that you
but they end up having
nursing
to do
assistants.
Because
nursing assistants are some of the worst people that mankind has ever produced. I don't know how the fuck these people have jobs. I don't know what happened to make these people continue to exist. I've never in my life met a single worthwhile, they're all I've experienced, they're worthless fucks. I don't understand why. I'm sure there are great ones out there. Don't get me wrong. I don't know why it has been my experience and my wife's experience that they are just universally garbage. But just a wild set of circumstances.
So what I was going to say is it's an easy job. There's aspects of it that are difficult, but it's an easy job to get if you have the right creds. The hardest part of the job is just getting the creds.
Is the education. Yeah.
Is the education involved in getting it. And it's technically not if you got a 4-year degree in engineering, even in a STEM field, you're not guaranteed a job as soon as you get out. Or something like nursing, you can go and
that is true. Nursing is such an in-demand thing. I will say too, though, a lot of the times that education doesn't stick.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how it is. Some of the most retarded medical takes I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
This includes backwoods Alabama people I've had conversations with. Some of the worst takes on medical care I've ever heard in my life comes from these apparently educated nurses.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Who are working in hospitals.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm listening to some of these conversations and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Hello? What?
Well, and also what kind of makes it what makes like, because if it was just like a Joe Schmo saying that shit, you wouldn't give a fuck. But the fact that you're like, well, you actually like, there's a little bit of authority tied to it, you know?
Yeah, like that's the thing.
And you're kind of like, oh.
Not only is it authority, I'm scared that this person will have to take care of me. I'm like, I don't want you anywhere near me. I don't care if I'm dying. What are you gonna do?
So for people, I mean, like if you didn't know what the fuck you wanted to do, right? And you were like, well, I know I want to get a job and I want to make money. Mm-hmm. You can go into nursing and you can guaranteed a job and you're guaranteed decent pay. You know what I mean? You can like, if you want to get good pay, you can work in a big hospital. You can work crazy hours. You can do all that shit. There's always time for that. If you don't want to do fucking shit, then you get it like you go to like a psychiatric hospital where you do is sit on your ass all day and don't do shit. And then, and so
those are some of the worst people you've ever met in your life too. I don't understand that.
Oh, I know. Well, my dad, runs these hospitals and has to work with all these people. Yeah, they suck. And so
one of them was literally a fake doctor.
Yeah, he was probably a good one. He's probably actually trying.
That's true.
But so it's not that hard of a job, right? And the only reason that I'm coming to that conclusion is just because, like, knowing a lot of nurses and hearing about their day-to-day stuff, and the only people. This is another hot take. The only people that you hear complaining about it are like the people that are saying that it's hard are the nurses, and they're women. I've never heard a male nurse complain that it's a hard job.
Yeah, that is true. I do think there's a large degree that's baked in there insofar as
saying.
I think it's a particularly difficult job for women just because they get more emotionally attached to a lot of the stuff that goes on in the workplace.
Yeah, like if I was a nurse, and that's why I'd be a horrible nurse. Because if I saw somebody come in there and there's like, they were ripped in half by, they got freaking their leg blown off, I'd be like, hey, we don't have fucking time for you right now. You're gonna have to sit your ass there. I'd go home, like they die in my arms, and I go home and be like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't give a fuck.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think,
and that's why I'd be a horrible nurse.
Yeah, I think
that's not a profession I'd be good at.
I think the only thing I'll sign off on here, because my wife would kill me otherwise, is I think that unfortunately there's an inverse correlation between the capacity to handle the difficulty of being a nurse.
Yeah.
And the emotive and empathetic capacity that one needs to be a good nurse.
Yeah.
Like those things are inversely correlated such that if you're going to be a good nurse, you also need to be highly sensitive to really difficult things that you're subjected to as a product of like being a good nurse. And because of horrible management and just general practices that hospitals and like medical care in general is subjected to, good nurses are very quickly pushed out because they just can't handle it.
Yeah.
And they because they're good at their job.
Yeah.
But you make them work the same way that people who are terrible at that job do.
Yeah.
And those people don't give a fuck.
Right.
They're there. You force them to work 12 hours. Yeah. And you're exactly right. Well, they'll that ER nurse that comes in at 7 a.m. and it's 6:59. They're in the lobby. Yeah. Somebody comes in with a grenade just went off in their backyard and they've got shrapnel covered. Yeah. And they're waiting. Click it.
Right.
Until that happens, they're not touching that patient. Right. And then the same thing happens at 6:59 p.m. and somebody comes in with a blown off leg. Yeah. And they're like, nah, and then click, and then they walk out. Now again, I want to state for the record, and there's a lot of good nurses out there. Yeah. There's so many good nurses. My wife was a great nurse. That's what I'm talking about.
One of the best. Go.
My wife is an incredible nurse. Or was, but y'all y'all have a bad reputation because you get used and abused, and that immediately makes you terrible at your job, and then you end up staying because. But in order to cope with being used and abused, you then go on to be a shitty nurse.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then that's also one of those things that like, one of those like the 1% like exceptional people, like moving things forward. The problem that I've seen a lot in the medical industry is that in the 50s, 60s, and like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, like when this big medical the big medical world was really blowing up, there was exceptional doctors at that time that were like trailblazing all this kind of stuff, and they were kind of setting the rules, and they were all on coke. And they were all on coke and crystal meth, and they were coked out of their mind, just off the walls on coke, and they set these just standards for like working hours and how you're supposed to like that shit doesn't make any sense. But when you're on coke, you're like, oh yeah,
this works.
Right. No, you should be on your
18-hour surgery.
Right. You should be 18. You should be able to work on your feet 18 hours. You should just be able to see 300 patients. You should be able to do all that shit. Yeah, you're on coke, bro. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and realistically, like back then, like the treatment courses were kind of like, slap some ice on it.
Right, put some ice on it, hit him with a hammer, and get him out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, give him some morphine and then walk him out.
Yeah, give him a vial of morphine and a big syringe. The time you spent with
one patient was like 5 minutes, and then you move on to the next one, and it's like you do the same thing
and coke. And then, you know what I mean? Like they were on the whole medicine closet because they had access to that. I don't know, pharmacies didn't exist or something. They were the pharmacists, and so they were just taking that shit. And so they set like these crazy working hours and standards and like how you have to do all this kind of stuff, which doesn't make any sense because you're like, no, I mean,
human beings are not meant to operate.
Right? It's funny because it's like, oh, there's all these like. Especially nowadays, there's all these like breakthroughs in the medical realm of like what people are like capable of being productive.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't actually then translate into the medical world. Where they're like, no, we're still going to make you work
12-hour
shifts with zero coke.
At least provide coke.
Yeah, have some coke ready to go. And not Coca-Cola. Cocaine.
Michael Caine.
Cocaine. And so, yeah. So that's what I was going to say about nurses is that, yeah, so there are definitely aspects of that job that are very difficult. But it's all women complaining about it. You don't see guy nurses really complaining about that shit. They're kind of like, shit's gonna.
Yeah, to be fair, guy nurses are like, they don't do the same thing as female nurses.
No.
Because there's so few of them, they all get relegated to like the same task, which is control the crazy patients,
right,
and do the heavy lifting.
Right.
When the 400-pound guy comes in, roll him over for me so that I can change his bedpan and change his sheets and everything else.
Right. Know? Really, what should happen, like if they want that shit to get easier and like it not be so stressful, is they just need to start refusing to work like that.
Yeah.
But they don't really. Women also have a hard time standing up for themselves. And the guy nurses knows this shit's easy, and they're kind of like, eh.
Well, yeah.
So, but if all the nurses got together and were like, "Hi," but
listen,
I'm sorry.
This is a level of spiciness.
It's a dangerous stuff.
I don't know how much heat I can take from this conversation. So I'm gonna deflect.
Okay. We're gonna move to something else.
We're gonna move on. I'm gonna say I love all women. I love my nurses. They're all great people for the most part. Even if you're terrible at your job.
You may be good at something else. I guess what I was going to say is that it's a job that there's very few fields that you can go in, get a 4-year degree, you could study for it, you can get a degree for that specific thing and come out guaranteed a job and good pay.
Yeah.
And there's not really that many other fields where you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, nurses are they're always in demand. Yeah,
right. So, it's always in demand. It's always something.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a statistical argument there insofar as that goes, which is to say that like, any field or occupation or whatever the case is that employs a large amount of people.
Yeah.
My statistical analysis is that most people are terrible.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So at least 50% of, those workers are going to be terrible at their job. So like, I don't interact with very many like skyscraper cleaners.
Yeah.
Right. The people that are up there with the squeegees and cleaning the windows and everything. I don't interact very much with those people. But, maybe there might be like a few 100,000 of them in the U.S. employed. Even if 50% of them were complete pieces of shit, garbage at their job, whatever it was, the odds of me interacting with one of those people so low.
Yeah.
Whereas the medical industry is so huge. It employs millions of nurses and doctors and other, hospital staff.
Right.
So I'm far more likely to encounter just a member of those groups, and then not just a member of them, but because of the statistical probability that there's so many people involved in this, and they're all people, that the probability that they're also terrible is fairly high.
And to be fair, I've met a lot of terrible doctors too.
Oh, doctors! I would argue hospital doctors are some of the worst people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah,
and
I think the only reason they get a good rap,
they need coke.
The only reason is because there's been the TV shows. There's been
a lot of good PR.
They get great PR from all these TV
Grey's
shows. Grey's Anatomy, all these shows House, Grey's Anatomy, General.
What's the guy?
ER. I mean, there's hundreds of hospital.
What's Neil Patrick Harris's? Damn it, he was a doctor. He played a doctor when he was really young.
Doogie Howser.
Doogie Howser, yeah. MD. Doogie Howser, MD.
Yeah, they got that autism. That's a new show.
No, you're talking about the new one.
Yeah, what's that one?
That one's The Good Doctor.
Oh yeah. Because they have so many doctor ones. Scrubs.
Yeah, but that It
was a sitcom.
Those are nurses though.
No, they were doctors. They were in residence.
There was some doctor. Oh, you're right. Yeah. Actually, you're right. No.
Yeah, they were in residency. So there's shows. Now there was nurses in that show too.
Yeah.
There's nurses in all those shows, but
nobody cares about the nurses in those shows.
I'm trying to think.
House, 0 nurses. I can't remember a time you see a nurse in that show
They're
and
all doctors.
meaningfully interact with them in some way, which is so retarded. Because the idea, I get that the concept of the show is that you have like House, who is a diagnostician, which is a highly specialized, but he has a team of multiple doctors, so highly paid, it's insane. And all they do is sit around and diagnose like singular case studies. There is no way on earth the hospital is making money on these people by funding one doctor.
You wouldn't believe what the insurance is being charged.
One doctor alone who's maybe getting like 12 cases a year.
Yeah.
Let alone funding an entire team to sit around House while he fucking
pranks him,
plays Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
Yeah. That show conceptually, great show.
Yeah, great show.
Great show, but conceptually, absolutely wild.
Yeah.
That's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what also pisses me off about those doctor shows? The lighting. They're always so dim. Like the lighting in them, like the way that they're shot. That also really pisses me off. It still does. It drives me insane. All the fucking like shows like Bones and those kind of like CSI, those special crimes
crime
like
show.
Investigation shows when they're in labs like looking over like and the shit is like barely lit. Like it's in the dark.
The only thing lit is the table.
Right. And I'm like, I have never seen this ever. Why would they be in a lab with the lights off, looking at...
Hospitals are some of the most disgustingly fluorescent places you've ever seen in your life.
Like, there's not a shadow in there.
Yeah, because all of the bulbs that were put there in the 1930s,
right? They're still hanging on.
Are still like you can hear them.
The elements have actually just like melted, but then welded themselves on, so they can't even come off.
Yeah, they can't even replace them.
Like they can't even burn out just because it's just direct current into it. And so when you watch the shows and you're like, you can't see. Like obviously, like if you had it lit like it is in real life on a TV show, it look disgusting.
It would look awful. Yeah,
I've never been in a hospital or a doctor's office or any place, and been like,
they tend to be very bright,
except for one dentist office I've been in. But dentists, they do it differently.
Dentists are a whole different breed.
Dentists
They're
it differently.
built different.
Dentists are built different, and generally, I like dentists. I've had.
Dentists are chill.
I've the people in the dental sphere, usually the reception people are kind of like, but
mid,
but they're reception people.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's again as an employment with so many people that the likelihood of encountering a bad one is just as likely as encountering a good one.
But dentists are usually pretty chill. Dentists are pretty chill, and like I said, that's the only office that I can. That dentist office, Dr. Gamble. His office.
Shout out,
Dr. Gamble put his Instagram up.
I'm not doing
that. Yeah, he had cool lighting in there. But he was a cool guy.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to get a tooth pulled tomorrow. Oh, and my dentist is great.
Yeah, dentists are cool.
I don't know what it is.
When I was a kid, my dentist was so pretty. I had a crush on her.
I've exclusively. I think I've only interacted with one. Like I've interacted with plenty of male dentists, but not like for care. I've only interacted with one for care, and it was this like old guy in his 70s or whatever. But all of my like primary dentists have been exclusively female, and Jesus Christ, they're all super attractive.
Yeah, they really are.
Because it's usually like there's a lot of Asians in the field because it's a good, easy, simple way into getting money and making your parents proud.
Yep.
And then everyone else is going to like they're all going to have perfect teeth.
Yeah.
And
they got beautiful teeth. They got good ass skin.
And with those in combination,
and also, it's probably too in the fact that like dentistry, you're so close to the other person's face.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You would not want to.
But you're close to other assets as well.
Right. That's true. You wouldn't want them. You wouldn't want that close. And that's my dentist. That like at that dentist's office when I had. And because he was helping me out, and he was like, yeah, I'll get you straight because I had my wisdom teeth coming in, and I didn't want to remove them. Plus, I was poor and I didn't have insurance, right? Yeah. But I knew this dentist guy, and so he was next door to where I was working, and he was in there all the time, and so we I talked to him every day, almost. That shit about full of me.
The panel behind you is a little loose. Hang on. I swear this doesn't usually.
Oh, that one. I was looking at the other one. Uh-oh. That one would have taken me by surprise.
I don't know when this fell, but it's okay.
One
of the corners held up.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So
I gotta work on my set.
I used to talk to him all the time because he worked next door. So when it was slow, he'd come over and hang out and stuff. And so I was like, man, I'm having a lot of pain from this wisdom tooth. And I was like, and so he was like, well, what we can do is I've got a laser and it cauterizes your gums. And so he's like, what I'll do is he's like, what's hurting you is it coming through the gums and your top teeth squishing on the gums. He's like, I'll take the laser, I'll cut it, and I'll cut your gums. And that way, when it's coming up, it's not tearing anything. And that'll alleviate a lot of pain. And I was like, awesome. And I was like, how much? He was like, give me $50 and I'll do that for you. I was like, hell yeah.
Nice.
And so he was like, well, when I have some downtime, like when I don't have anything going on, no appointments or an opening, I'll come over, I'll come get you, and then we can go do it. And I was like, sweet. And so it was one afternoon, like after lunch or so, he came over. He was like, I don't have any openings for about 45 minutes. Come, let's do it. And so I go into his dentist's office. I hadn't been in there before. Bro's got a fountain This is a shopping center, right? He's got a fountain in the front, all right? Coming to the back, it's cool. All the stations are it's lined up almost like a barbershop, like a salon, but with the barrier walls. It's dark, but the stations are illuminated, in the hall. I was like, damn, this lighting's cool. But what's funny about it is he had there was no clients in there at the moment. So his whole staff was he was like, hey, I'm bringing out the laser. We're going to do his laser. You guys want to watch this? And they were like, oh, yeah. And this dude was so cool. And his entire staff was beautiful women. All incredible, supermodels. Yeah. They were all incredibly beautiful women. And he was a guy. And then his right hand, I guess, I don't know what he was. I guess his head nurse or whatever, what a dentist equivalent of that is, was a dude. But the whole staff was just beautiful women. And so I just remember I'm in the chair, leaning back in the chair, and he's opening my mouth and he's giving me the shots and everything and checking it and looking at it. And I'm surrounded just 100%, all around these just beautiful young girls just looking down into my mouth wow, ooh, cool, and all that kind of stuff. It was a very, and it was dark in the thing, except for the lights coming down directly on me, and their faces are just getting the light that's reflected off of me. It was very strange. And then he did the shots so my mouth went numb, and he busted out the laser, and you could see the light just shining out of my mouth, and all the girls were just standing all around in a circle, and it took 15 minutes tops, but it was a very strange experience.
That is pretty wild.
Yeah, it was very strange.
I don't know how we got here.
And then my other friend, who he always, when any time a tooth was bothering him, he was just oh, you got to get it pulled.
What?
Yeah, well, he was like that.
That's wild.
And then he would to only go to he would go to the Chinatown, Westheimer dentists. They don't speak English. They're just all Asian because they gave him the cheapest price because you pay cash. And he would have to call and find one because most of them wouldn't want to do it because he was black. I'm not making this up. He'd be on speakerphone talking to me because he thought this was so funny. I'd be listening to it, and they'd be like, you're black, and he'd be like, yeah. He'd be like, oh no, we don't do black. Your bone's too hard. We can't pull teeth. They told him that they couldn't pull his teeth because his bones were too hard, and so he'd have to call around and find one of these Asian dentists that would pull his teeth. That is, even though he was black.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Dentists. Okay, so second topic, semi-related. Do you have anything?
Would you consider yourself part of the cream team or squirt squad? That's the only question I have.
I don't.
Sorry.
I don't.
Put me on the spot.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Think of a cream soda or squirt, the lemon lime drink similar to Sprite.
I am not sure. I've only had both of those things literally combined less than 4 times in my life.
Well, squirt you can just pretty much equate to Sprite or 7-Up.
I disagree. My memory of it is that it's much worse, but
well, yeah.
And cream soda varies so heavily on
that is true.
Which cream soda you get. I haven't drank soda in years.
Yeah.
I just don't drink soda. But from memory, I'm gonna have to go with. There's some decent cream sodas.
There are.
I'll throw. Whereas I think Squirt in general is just kind of a low class, clear. One of the clear, because you have the 7-Up, you got the Sprite. Canada Dry, you got Sprite.
Canada Dry, though, that's ginger ale.
Yeah. Which is better.
Better, yeah.
But it's still in the same category. It's a clear soda, right?
Yeah. What about Crystal Pepsi?
I've never had that.
It tastes like regular Pepsi.
Regular Pepsi is awful, so. So I would say that probably is awful too.
You know what I hate? People that really stand on the whole idea that they're like, they taste the same. Coke and Pepsi taste the same. He was like,
I'm genuinely terrified because I've never actually tried it. But every time I see those TikTok videos or any of those videos where they line up the drinks behind the box and they take a straw.
Yeah.
I am terrified that this is not always fake when I see them, or these people are just genuinely like taste retarded. Because there's no fucking way. That there's just zero chance I would mix these things up. Like Coke and Pepsi are not even close.
Yeah. If you threw a Dr. Pepper in there.
Yeah, that's even worse. Like I just
like 23 flavors.
I just couldn't imagine mixing these things up. I don't know who these people are.
I will say, like, I've done that in the sense, I've done like where you blindfold yourself and you're like, can you taste the difference? Yes, you can taste the difference. The hard part just becomes like, the difficult part is like, okay, I know this is a Coke and I know this is a Dr. Pepper, but when you're drinking them back to back, your mouth is getting like coated in all the flavors and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like if you sniff a lot of like, if you're smelling colognes, like if you go and you're trying colognes and you're smelling cologne
at some point
it just blends all together. And you're kind of like, they all kind of start like carrying over, meaning like if you drink something, you're like, okay, I know this is definitely a Coke, and then you drink the Dr. Pepper, you're like, the flavor profiles from the Coke are now like being brought over, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I could see that. Sodas in general just being as like potent as they are taste wise, like that makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, still, there are certain sodas I just couldn't imagine. Like Dr. Pepper's one of them. Like it tastes like toothpaste to me. I just couldn't imagine getting it mixed up with anything.
Yeah, I think like the real way to like would be if they're like, okay, you're blindfolded and they give you a drink and then you drink it and you're like, is this a Coke, Dr. Pepper, or Pepsi? And you're not drinking all three of them and telling the difference. Like if you're drinking it right there, you would know. 100%. Back to back would make it a little bit different just because like the way you're
that makes sense.
Because you drink the first one, your tongue's nuked, from flavor.
Yeah. Sodas are terrible. Okay. Question.
Okay.
I've never seen your badge.
Oh yeah.
I have been contemplating since last week about this idea that I realized, which is that I've very much been in a bubble in terms of my general political activities insofar as like information spaces and all of that, which isn't to say like I feel like I've radically changed any of my opinions on any of these things. Like I still feel like factually and at least sentimentally speaking, in the sense of how I feel about these things, that hasn't changed. But what has changed about it is that like my conception of like how many people are actually like the people that I tend to see in my circles, like how many people are actually like these crazy leftists online it's much fewer than I realized. Now, I will say, I still think it's too many, especially in the circles that I semi-interact with, which is like college and university, younger people. The only saving grace of that is that these people don't vote, which is so nice, because good Lord, I couldn't imagine if they did. But imagine listening to these people, having to listen to them, because as a politician you're required to, because they represent a significant amount of your
people don't even listen to politicians.
Well, I'm saying as a politician, you respond to your voter base, which is typically older white men, right? Like as a general rule.
Yeah, it's an old lady.
Yeah,
writing you about her, the neighbor's dog taking a shit in your yard or something.
Yeah.
You're like,
and so in recognizing this and kind of like taking a step back and going like, okay, the world isn't as crazy as I thought.
Yeah.
What it's led me to is what I was telling you this morning, which is that like, oh, okay, like the world isn't as crazy as I thought.
Yeah.
It's actually a lot more boring.
Yeah.
What that also means to me, though, is that this whole thing about spineless cowards, that I was complaining about which is to say people who voice convictions with no evidence no evidence behind that conviction. Yeah. This has negatively impacted my perspective of humanity in a way that I didn't think it would, which is to say that like the fact that all these spineless people do exist, and then otherwise there's a bunch of people who are kind of like middling, for the most part, because they don't interact with this stuff.
Spineless and middling.
No.
Or spineless or middling.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a
spineless or middling. It just seems to be a real lack of like convicted. People with conviction. People with convictions. And I wonder what that's doing to me. Is making me highly very poor at very non-receptive.
You're sensitive to these people with no convictions.
I'm sensitive to people. Sensitive to middling and fake. To cowards, right? I'm sensitive to these people, and unfortunately, it seems like statistically speaking, these are the vast majority of people because for a variety of reasons. Okay, so
I think too, that's just always been the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's those middling.
It takes a special
and spineless, and those people have been around forever. The exceptional people, the real exceptional people, are the ones who are able to stand out from that and then have the ability to round up those people and get them to do shit for them. Those are the real
leaders.
Real leaders. And not like Donald Trump is not.
That's exactly who I thought of. I was like, that guy's really good at doing that. Now to say that he's making a positive influence on society.
Yeah, but see, there's I feel like there's
maybe questionable.
I feel like he's like a pseudo leader in that sense. Is that there's nobody there, and so the first person with a big voice and a lot of charisma fills that void. People latch onto that. You know what I mean?
I had a profound thought about that. Something I thought, and I don't know how true this is, but it's something I really want to think about. Is I used to think Donald Trump was exceptional.
Yeah.
I don't actually know that he is. No. I realized it seems like Donald Trump is a product of being the first real president during the new internet age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that frame of mind, all you need to do to understand why he exists and how he exists is to frame him against not only the Democratic Party, but Hillary Clinton in particular.
Yeah.
And once you see it from the perspective of how these people came across in this new internet age, with social media being such a driver of cultural sentiment and all of that, it makes complete and total sense that it would have been, it doesn't matter which president it would have been whatever the first president was in 2016 that would have rode the wave of this new
way of communicating and way of outreaching.
Yeah, and cultural, the way that culture moves and shapes and the speed of it and everything. Yeah. The fact that Trump was able to capitalize on it so much better than anyone else is testament to his understanding of that dynamic. But insofar as it speaks to his qualifications as a leader or anything else is all kind of nebulous.
And I mean that that's one of the things that I would give Donald Trump in the sense of he is good at business and opportunity. You know what I mean? And probably more than anything is understanding an opportunity. Yeah. And which is something that you have to be good at if you're good in business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you can't deny that like, people, I gotten in conversations when all that kind of stuff was going on, because that was one of the things that at least I would, that was one of the things that I was kind of like, I felt like it was undeniable that you had to give Trump that, right? That people would be like, oh, well, no, he's not actually a good businessman because he's lost all these businesses and all his money was given to him and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of like, yeah, but he was always open to the opportunity and always knew how to take advantage of an opportunity to benefit him.
Right.
And benefit his companies.
And honestly, even in that regard, like, even if he was like a crook, which it kind of seems like he was, which isn't that unique in that sphere, that's still a skill set.
Right.
Like,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, being a con man is difficult.
Yeah,
like, there's a reason not every homeless guy on the street is a good con man.
Right.
Right. Good con men make good, make themselves good lives for the most part.
Right.
Because it's difficult.
Right.
But and Trump, whether or not he's good con man or just a good business minded in that regard, it doesn't matter. It still makes him capable and
exactly.
Because
you're not good at it, you fail.
Yeah.
You fail.
There are plenty of people that,
and then you become like a PM or something.
Yeah. Taking shots. So anyway.
So yeah, no, exactly right. Like, he capitalized on the fact that he was like the way that you reach people and the way that you stir up like interest is different now.
Yeah. I feel like I think he understood and capitalized knowingly on the transformation that media would have in the presence of someone like him.
Yeah.
Right, which is to say, like, the amount of airtime he got during the 2016 election and then onwards was unprecedented for any candidate of any time ever in history, in U.S. history, or I would say global history. I mean, just the radical transformation of how media companies responded to a person like that, totally upending the norms and everything else. Just like he knew. Yeah, he just knew. And to be and part of the reason that I believe that is because he's been doing it for years.
Right.
He was shitposting on Twitter before it was cool.
Yeah, he was shitposting from the very beginning.
He'd been giving hot takes to magazines in the 90s.
From the very beginning.
Right. Like, this has been his he's been a cult of personality for a long time.
Right.
Right. So, in saying that, I do wonder, from your perspective, what the difference is, because I agree that there's like a vapidness there in the sense of like he filled a space because he was the first to do so, and he capitalized on it in a way that people hadn't before. Yeah. Because nobody could, because we weren't there yet. But I wonder what the difference is in like his style of like populism. Yeah. Right, which is an appeal to a kind of common denominator that people can like latch onto in some meaningful sense. And like the difference between him as a quote unquote an effective leader, and I'm going to use this comparison not because I think they're in any way comparable, but just from a leadership perspective, like what fundamentally the difference is in how you exercise authority over with your leadership. Yeah. His methodology of corralling an audience and generating popularity and using them for his own interest versus someone like Hitler, who somehow rallied around a cause that his people could like genuinely take action on in a very real way. Yeah. Whereas, like I was complaining about, the people in January 6th went home the fucking next day. Right. And the people in Auschwitz were daily gassing and digging, right? And it's like, what's the disparity there? Obviously, there's a lot of cultural and historical context that goes alongside that in the sense of, different, the whole hard times make soft men type thing. But
and I think,
I'm curious from your perspective, like what leadership, what kind of leadership, like what leadership is going on there from a...
Yeah. Well, in a case like someone like Hitler, which isn't, the people like to compare Donald Trump to Hitler a lot, which is
No,
I mean, insult
retarded.
to Hitler. Honestly,
yeah, like that would be my first thing.
Yeah.
Like, no, he was way more effective as a leader.
No, Hitler was an incredible leader.
Yeah,
and he was an incredible leader. He was like, he had all the things. He had all the aspects to make him a great leader, unfortunately, a lot of the times when those great people arise, they a lot of times use it for horrible things.
Yeah.
You know, there's been very few cases in the world where you've had an incredibly great leader that changed the world for the good. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, and the ones that have, you know, their shit's talked about for thousands of years. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And oftentimes, even when it's seen from it's like there's a positive light put on it. There is a vast degree of like incredible destruction that was
absolutely.
waked in their path. I mean, you know, the glory of the Roman Empire and stuff that we talk about, or even the degree of like how incredible the Alexander the Great was.
Right.
You know, we think of these as you know, incredible empires or incredible leaders in their respects for what they were able to accomplish. But this was all like on the backs of insane campaigns with basically genocide in a lot of in one way or another during, you know, acts of global change. And so we look back on these people and say that like, oh wow, they were very effective leaders, but it all came on the back of
I mean, it was there was horrible destruction and things like that, but they were things that shaped the world, the world as we know it. Whether you could, you know, whether you could argue that's good or not, right? You know, you whether you could argue that's good or not, is just depends on a lot of things. You know, like culture and, you know, where, you know, obviously
a lot of moral relativism going on there,
right? But you know, if you're somebody who lives in the West and benefits from Western culture, like, and enjoys the things that we have, you have to be like, give credit where credit's due, in the sense of like, that stuff wouldn't be that wouldn't be possible, if, you know, if you didn't have, you know, King Leonidas stand at the hot gates, you know what I mean? You know, like which, you know, like Xerxes was an incredible leader.
Oh, absolutely.
Out of the East, he was an incredible leader. But if the things that he would have brought to the world, if he was successful in his campaigns in Greece and things like that, would have changed
the face of
everything, like of how we live. Whether it would have been better, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to measure something like that when your only not your only frame of reference, but your primary frame of reference is very westernized, right? I am curious. This is completely like this is very far from what we were talking about, but I am curious about, you know, what responsibility do we have to view ourselves through the lens of our modern, you know, experience, as opposed to a product of history, you know? And then also, not to get into a philosophical debate, because metaphysics are fucking, they are where they are. But what I'm going to use the term responsibility, because I think it's useful insofar as it actually interacts with our everyday life, as opposed to like very esoteric arguments about how we should or shouldn't feel about these different things. But what responsibility do we have to view the lens of our modern experience and our sensibilities and our, you know, general perspective weighed against the history that brought us here versus the experience that we're having now?
I think now maybe it's just because I like history. that I think it's incredibly important to like have some kind of like tie to that, how far back it goes, you know. So I think that's really important for that to be something that you reflect on and something that you think about. And I think it's something that you should be like, if you belong to that culture, right? And if you're part of that world, I think you should be able to look back on those things and be like, and see the positive side of it. And I don't think you should be blind to the negative sides of those things, right? Like, and say, oh, well, you know, that didn't happen, you know, or whatever. Like you should know that, right?
Yeah.
But I have a problem. I have a problem with a lot of the things that I do tend to have a problem with a lot of the things that I see where it's like, at least in the United States, it's at least in the United States right now, especially, there's people who have been in the United States and for multiple generations don't have any kind of like tie to their history.
Yeah.
And if they do, they feel like it's something they should be ashamed of. You know what I mean? In the sense of like, you know, most first or second generation Americans don't feel that way. Like they're pretty in tune with their where they came from and their history and all their kinds of stuff. But for the vast majority of people in the United States that have their families have been in the United States for a long time, they have like this weird, like either they don't interact with it at all, or if they do, they interact with it in a very like negative way. And so I don't think that's good at all. Because like all throughout like societies in the world, you know, throughout societies throughout history, one of the things that has like that they all have, and one of the things that make them really strong is like this deep tie to their history. You know, like Romans, you know, the Romans wanted to be great because their ancestors were great, you know what I mean? And they were great Romans. And, you know, the Japanese wanted to be great because their ancestors were great, you know what I mean? Like there was these ties to that. And at least in the United States, it's like, okay, well, you know, my family's been here since the Pilgrims, you know, I can date myself back to the Pilgrims, and it's like, oh, well then, you know, oh, were your great grandparents slave owners? And oh no, they were in the North. Oh, okay. Well then they were colonizers and killed the natives, you know what I mean? And so it's like there's this kind of like,
I see what you're saying there. I was a little confused at first because I was thinking like my go-to example is like there's a lot of Italians that are like fourth generation Italians here that are very vocal and proud of their heritage and stuff. But I think especially African Americans, because it's so much more difficult for them. They don't have, they have so little information that it's really difficult to even have ties to that. I often wonder, this is kind of an aside, but I often wonder how much that is part of the influence that negatively affects their culture. Not to say that like, I mean that in the direct sense, which is like not having an understanding of a cultural narrative that's passed down from generation and developed and held and honored. It really can take a toll on people's psyche, because it demonstrates a real lack of purpose when you don't have that center narrative.
And like, you know, we've talked about before, like it is more isolating, you know, like, because we live in a society that's pretty isolating in general and in your daily life. And then if you don't even have, if you're isolated.
I think it's worse than that. I think we live in a society that's pseudo-connected.
Right. Pseudo-connected. You feel like you're connected, but it does nothing for your actual feelings of isolation. And then when you're even isolated from your family ties and your ancestry and all that kind of stuff, like you are just what? You're just nothing.
I was going down this line because I'm thinking about this like from the perspective of like the Japanese are a really good example.
Yeah.
Culturally speaking, my understanding is that part of the reason that there's a kind of exceptionality with Japanese people is that, you know, part of their cultural narrative is built on exception.
Yeah.
Right. On a pride in quality and innovation and just a real, you know, tenacity for creating, you know, marvels of engineering. I mean, their woodworking has been a wonder of the world for centuries.
Right.
And I wonder and part of also their cultural and generational heritage has been a very xenophobic one.
Yeah.
They're not rude to foreigners, but they're not at all accepting of them. There's very much a homogeneity that's valued in their culture.
And comparatively speaking to their entire history, that's them being even not directly like, no, you're not allowed here, is very recent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like thousands of years of their history was like, we only talk to the Dutch. You know what I mean? It was like,
pretty much. And everyone else, we go kill every once in a while.
Right.
Yeah, and so I wonder, you know, I wonder what the cultural forces and interactions with that are, and like to what degree of responsibility we have. Like, I'm thinking about myself. If I was Japanese and I could see the value of my culture in a very real way, which is that we have an exceptional, you know, they're an exceptional people.
Yeah.
To what degree am I responsible for challenging notions of that culture that maybe aren't contributing as heavily to these positive influences of society? You know, like what degree of responsibility do we have to analyze the force of change when it comes to our adaptation to the world? And you know, because realistically, Japan has been on the sites of population experts for longer than most other first world countries because they have consistently had incredibly low birth rates for a while. And I can't help but think that it's because their cultural value of homogeneity is interacting negatively with how modern society is breeding a pseudo-connectedness, and then a lot of other cultural practices surrounding courtship and all of that just not working in a modern day, in a modern context. And, you know, part of the conversation, the Shapiro and Destiny conversation had an element of that in it, which was kind of funny. I didn't know how to react to Shapiro kind of just saying, like, you know, Destiny is advocating for this ideal of realism about the direction of the world. You know, this kind of forward motion that the world has about, you know, you can never take the blindfold off or you can never put the blindfold back on once it's on, which is to say, like, we're not going to get rid of birth control. Women are going to be participating in the workforce. These are extraneous forces on how modern people live, and there's no way to untick that box. It's over. And Shapiro is steadfast on the fact of, like, okay, well, they should still live in many of the same ways that they did before. And it's like, I don't disagree with the notion that there's probably a lot of positivity to be gained with that. What I disagree with is I don't think you can reasonably ask people to interact with that reality when the forces that govern the world now are so different than they've been for previous generations. And so my examination of this question of responsibility as it relates to how we question the nature of our culture and the ways in which it informs us is like, you know, how responsible am I to question how I feel from a Western perspective about, you know, cultural institutions and how and what we value in society and how we there's certain fundamental things that I think you can see across cultures that's really important. Family, the power of connecting people in a very real way and maintaining the strength of that relationship and connection. There are fundamentals there, and they just kind of vary in how they're practiced, but there are things like the disparity and like homogeneity between somewhere like Japan and the U.S., which is like polar opposites and all these different things.
Right. Well, and this is going to make me sound like a boomer, but there is truth to it, is that in the United States, because the United States is so like combined with so many cultures and so many things, the one thing that was the connecting thing is being an American. Right. And that we've lost a lot of that sentiment, I feel like, in just because now there's just so much like scrutiny on everything that's done, and kind of like what we were talking about last time, and it was like, oh, well, now we know all these horrible things that our government's done and things that have happened in the United States and things like that. And so then it makes it really hard for people to be like, well, I can't be proud of that with a good conscience.
Yeah, you're like singing, I'm proud to be an American.
Right. And so like you're just kind of like this like level of like, kind of like, oh, I don't know if I should be.
I don't know if I don't know how strongly I want to associate with that. And I think,
right.
I think you're exactly right, which is that you need something really powerful to associate with in order to overcome that sense of purposelessness. Right. Because it's a really powerful acting force on how we
I think,
live our lives.
I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump did really well is speak to that in a way that related to people a little bit more. In the sense of like, no, you should be proud to be an American. You should be happy to be an American. Being an American is great.
Right.
And you shouldn't be ashamed of that. You know what I mean? And I think there was kind of...
And not only that, even more to your point, join the movement of great Americans making progress to make the country great again.
Right.
It's like, it's not only a call to the people who are proud to be Americans and pursuing that sense of like unity, but it's also a call to like, and we can do something together about this. It's not just that America's great, you should be proud of being American. It's let's go do, let's be great Americans together to make this country what it once was. Kind of
thing, And you saw, and it made it a great slogan because it also upset a lot of people. Right. Because then they were looking at it through the lens of like,
what's wrong with our country?
Right. What's wrong with our country right now?
And then
what's
a lot
making
of people,
it not so great?
Yeah.
And then also the like,
the scrutiny. Right. This country is terrible.
Right. Yeah. And you're trying to bring it back to an even worse time. Yeah. You're great again. Like when we had slaves. Like is that what you mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's when it was great.
Yeah.
And so.
Which is fair on both accounts,
right? Exactly,
right on the sense of
right, exactly, and I think that's what made it so divisive, and such a good slogan.
Yeah,
because
it worked.
Because it worked, and that just like it fueled both sides, in the sense of like if you were somebody who agreed with that and you were like, I feel like we've dropped off and. I want us to be back. Right. You had that feeling, and then when you saw somebody else reacting to it, like, "Oh, well, what do you mean?"
Right.
It gets you even
immediately
more
invoked a sense of
like, "Oh, this is somebody who's fighting against.
This is my opposition."
Right. This is my opposition,
which lends credibility to that movement.
Right.
Right. Because if you see it as opposition rather than a joke.
Right.
Then all of a sudden it's something that to contend with,
right?
As opposed to, if you're just kind of laughing at it,
right? And it's like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, the United States has done horrible things throughout its history, but we've done like, with something like slavery or something like, like something like slavery, that's a horrible thing. But the United States, Americans killed other Americans over it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there was.
Yeah. America stopped slavery despite itself.
Right. Despite itself. And like
a testament to
right.
an exceptional change in culture.
Exactly. And it was like, and which, another exceptional leader like Abraham Lincoln to be able to be able to like pull that off.
Yeah.
And corral those people and be able to like be somebody that, some random person in New York be like, yeah, I'm going to go fight and die for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like something like that's horrible, but there's like incredible forces in the United States that like worked really hard and died to correct that. Yeah. And then, things were not so good for African Americans afterwards for a long time, but there's been a lot of like work to correct that. And if you look at the kind of changes and things that were being done for African Americans and the kind of push for them and comparatively to the rest of the world, you know what I mean? Like is quite progressive in the sense of where the rest of the world was kind of
they
weren't so open to it,
Yeah,
and the United States was kind of, the United States kind of was.
Yeah, the United States was kind of the first successful experiment in the anti-homogeneity project, right? And like the way that societies functioned, large scale societies functioned for the most part throughout history was homogeneity, right. And then if you didn't have homogeneity, you had severe hierarchy, right, which was slavery or servitude of some kind, right? Third class citizens,
right?
And America sucked for that for a long time. They were also kind of like the first to kind of do it in modern history, because as a large scale project,
right? And I can't think of a time in history where a society had large scale slave labor, and then freed the slaves and then tried to integrate the slaves. You know what I mean? Usually, if a society has large scale slave labor, it's all the slaves band together and then kill everyone, and then they become the ruling class, or they just leave.
They get exiled.
Yeah. They just fucking they all band together and they go fuck this, and they get the fuck out. They don't like integrate back into the society that they were slaves under.
I don't know how much credit I'm willing to give America for that. Because I don't think it was possible for them to go back, because there'd been so many generations and there was no home for them.
Right.
Abraham Lincoln's suggestion was to send them back to, was it Liberia or something like that? Someplace in West Africa. But clearly, that wasn't going to happen. Yeah. They didn't speak the language. What do you think what do you think they're going to do over there? So, in some ways, I'm kind of
there's also like
willing to credit that
geography involved in that. You know what I mean? Like, in a lot of like, if you were a slave if you were like, the slaves the Jewish slaves in Egypt, they just walk into the desert. You know what I mean? Like, they can just go walk off and get away. Where they could have taken Canada though. It's too cold.
Yeah, it's too cold. They would have
go to Mexico. Mexico actually had a pretty they were pretty superpower back then.
Yeah, they had their shit tight. They wanted nothing to do with all that. But I mean, I do struggle with the line of reasonability when it comes to how to navigate history from a historian's perspective, in the sense of like, recognizing the horrors of all of that, and also kind of just like, in part, it's the through line through it all is the narrative of humanity, right, which is to say, like, our ancestors tens of thousands of years ago we're still very much a product of that kind of like evolutionary process. And how we built society around that, and how our literal physical bodies and minds and everything developed around those circumstances. And this is like wholly unique. Not because like the circumstances are unique, but because our bodies are not uniquely adapted to the circumstance because of how rapid the change has been. And when I say body, I mean like all aspects of that, like mind, thought, culture, all the things that compose, our interaction with this. So, okay, we have this problem, right? Which is people, and we talked about this a little bit last week about this problem of meaning, right? And what you're kind of getting at, it seems like, in part, is like one of the ways that you solve that is by strongly associating with and interacting with the value and honoring the direct, lineage of history and the effect of the generations before you. This is something Jordan Peterson talks about a lot, and where I tend to fall off with him is how desperate he comes across with this, in the sense of like, I truly think it's a serious problem. This problem of meaning more broadly. What I'm not so sure about, and again with the Shapiro statement too, is that like, I don't know how to make these things intersect. The uniqueness of our modern...
I do.
Oh, gosh.
Collapse.
Now you're the one talking about Civil War. I was the one that was all hyped up about it.
It doesn't have to be. Well, I'm not hyped about it. I'm like... But... a lot of those values and a lot of those things that like get talked to, like caring about your, like giving a fuck about your lineage and your history and where you came from, and things like strong families and things like that. They seem to be things that humans tend to do out of necessity when you've got nothing, right? Like, because you don't got shit to distract you. You have to latch onto something, and collapse would. And I'm not talking like right at the collapse. I'm talking like, collapse, then, where things are in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, like those large gaps of time.
Sure. I guess I
those things, then
I wouldn't know how to interact with that if that's what I assumed was happening.
Well, what I mean is like, that's, I'm not saying that that's the right answer. I'm not saying that that's the correct answer. I'm just saying, at least I think that would be one of the answers to
this increasing problem of modernity and our poor interaction with it.
Right. In the sense of like that, I mean, that seems like that's one of the answers that would correct.
You think it's the most likely one?
No. Well, I think probably the most likely one. Or the like, yeah, I think it's probably the most likely one. I think it's probably the most likely one, just because that's just kind of how things work. It seems
like in history.
If history's an indication, things get really, really good, and society progresses to a certain level, and then shit just falls apart. It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
And I think that it might be a little naive to think that won't happen again.
Yeah. I guess in part I question I question the differences with just because of the scale difference, right? Which is to say that like the Roman Empire lasted how many years? 800.
Oh well, it depends on which segment of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of like the primary, like when you think of the Roman Empire, the main, bulk of it.
Oh yeah, like emperors and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost near 1,000. I mean, it's like 800 years or so, and there's a bunch of highs and lows in that time period.
Yeah,
and stuff
for
like
sure.
That.
I mean, and the Egyptian and
the Egyptian
dynasty,
and,
dynasties, I should say,
and Chinese and stuff like that. Though I think they're lying, but they lie about so much other stuff.
Yeah, similarly, like I kind of wonder because of the scale difference, which is to say that like I wonder if there's an acceleration because of the scale. I wonder if it like there's some sort of consistency as a product of like the number of years.
Yeah.
I wonder if the advancement of technology and different like modern things that haven't existed before are making a significant impact on that timeline. Because America is very young.
Yeah.
For an empire of this size
to
exist. And so but
it's about due for some big.
You do get that sense, and but I wonder if it's like actually in 200 years when we have interstellar travel.
Yeah.
And that's when the collapse happens, and then the collapse looks a lot closer to something like, the hell are those books? The Book of the New Sun. Is that what it's called?
Okay, yeah. Or it's just like living in the rubble of.
Yeah, but there's still like this weird, this weird like interaction between modernity and or futurism, I should say.
Futurism
and the collapse of society in the sense of like there's still interstellar travel going on.
And there's still technology.
And there's still technology, this seems like the common denominator in these collapses is a rubbling of interconnected societal things, which tended to be around geographic lines in history, but now it seems more like until like when we become interstellar, it'll be on a planetary line. But as it is now, it's like on a it's a weird a weird
multi-continent.
It's a weird scale to like measure against because we've never had like it this big. But it's very easy to imagine when it's this big, and it was easy to see in history when it was this big. But we've this size right now with the interconnectedness of the globe and how like these different superpower continents are connected. It feels very strange what collapse at that scale looks like.
Yeah, if I had to imagine if I was going to do like a sci-fi element, like a way that something like that would be pretty horrible. Like the early on would look really bad, and most of the like actual connecting between the countries and continents and things like that would probably go away pretty fast for most people. I think probably whatever kind of hierarchies arise from that, because so like in a global collapse at this scale would be, if China went into civil war, like all out civil war, and just was then all production was then halted out of China because they were too busy killing each other. The world as we know it would change dramatically. Same thing in the United States. If the United States went into civil war and everything stopped, as far as like production, what it's purchasing, what it's selling, how it communicates with the
warfare alliances, all of this stuff.
If all that shit went out the window, I mean, it all goes down. And any big major country, is then worth, we're dropped back quite a bit. And so I think, for probably most people like me and you, we're not going to be able to, most of the things that we have, we're not going to have access to the internet. We wouldn't have access to the internet. We wouldn't have access to cell phones. We wouldn't have, so everything for us would be thrown back.
Yeah.
A couple hundred years as far as what we would have access to. There'd be people in society that would have access to those things, depending on where they are on the hierarchical scale of whatever government has been put in place.
Yeah. And then I'm sure there'll be like rebel alliances that are utilizing like...
Right. Yeah. We took over this node that, we're controlling a node that's got a fiber
connection
a fiber line to,
another,
the UK or something like that. So we can communicate to groups over there. Mm-hmm. So there would be small portions that would have access to that, and maybe even airplanes and, fuels and stuff like that, so that they could travel. But for us... For most people, it would be you're trying to just survive. You're just trying to, you probably don't have electricity. You're just trying to get food. You're just trying to get water. And if it's even if it's 50 years from the event, it's still I couldn't see.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how much like there wouldn't be enough change in that time period.
Right. There wouldn't be enough.
Although I say that, but honestly, it's hard to say. I mean, you just think about the change from like the year 1900 to the year 2000.
Yeah.
Is unprecedented.
Yeah.
It's quite literally unbelievable in a variety of ways, insofar as like how interconnected it is and everything else. Like the same things. In part, that's also what lends credence to what you're saying, which is like, well, how quickly they came up can also be how quickly they come down, right? This globalism that we've found ourselves locked in, that people like to say, is escapable in some way.
Right.
They're retarded. Is a very like it's a insurmountable thing in some ways.
Yeah.
I wonder, from your perspective. I mean, it doesn't seem reasonable. It doesn't seem reasonable to like. It doesn't seem reasonable to act that way. Like we're both still going to work tomorrow, right? And we work for oil companies,
right?
Which more than likely will not be doing business by the time, we have grandkids. Or, actually, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think that's going anywhere for a
while. But yeah, I mean, like. We don't live our lives with this kind of looming in any significant way. I do wonder, is there a way that we could interact with that meaningfully? What I'm trying to do is not become a spineless fuck and not be one of those guys at January 6th who goes home the next day. I'm trying to be like, okay, let's say that this is a very real possibility.
Yeah.
Right? Just by nature of the way the world is constructed and how fragile things are, and history definitely shows there's a lot of these, and whatnot. Okay, how do I responsibly engage with this? Which is to say, like, you have kids, I don't. But if I had kids, I would still be planning to send them to college.
Right.
Like that would be part of my plan for them.
Yeah.
But I would also want to be cognizant in a very real way about what does it look like to interact with the coming world, and that seems like a prescient question in a way that it's always been very difficult to be prescient about in history, right? The fall of the Roman Empire, or the fall of any great empire, was always preceded by an accelerated, rapid change and decline as a product of like exceptional events.
Yeah.
Whereas this seems very much like we can see this, the rungs of society being very loose,
right?
And so how do we navigate that without being like doomerism,
right.
like doomerists or anything like that? Well, like not being like building the bunker in the backyard kind of stuff. Like realistically, you'll get nuked before that works. But like what does that look like to interact with meaningfully? I'll give you an answer. I'll give you an answer, and then I'm anxious to hear yours. But this is as best as I can come up with. This is something I've been struggling a lot with, especially lately, as a product of this pragmatism that I've been trying to interact with more, especially in my own life, which is why I asked this question in the first place. But I genuinely do have a strong belief in the emergence of a lot of new and profound ideas about who we are, how we interact with the world, what technology gives us insight to, what does it mean to interact with things beyond human, like these human elements that we've kind of like all participated in for a long time. I have a very strong suspicion that a lot of these things are going to be leading us in ways that we just don't have prescience of right now.
Yeah.
But are being like signaled by the emergence of technology that gives us insight into like stuff that we
wouldn't have access
to.
We
wouldn't even thought was possible, 200 years ago, like cell phones. Like, it makes perfect sense, right? The science is there. I can understand it. It's all cool.
Yeah.
And that's great. But still, in the same way that 200 years ago, if I was trying to talk to someone about that, then they would be struggling a lot.
Yeah.
I have to think and imagine like in 200 years, they'll be the same thing. There'll be technologies and things that we're interacting with and ways in which we live our lives and everything that are going to be so foreign to me.
Yeah.
That even though they'll make perfect scientific sense and we have an explanation for all these things that all like fall in line really nicely, for them, for me right now, like those are all they're very difficult to interact with. So my point in saying that is that I don't want to be blind to that future.
Yeah.
I also don't want to be like
paralyzed by it.
Yeah, I don't want to be open to everything. I don't want to be like we talked about last week, these people who see, the fucking ponies in the clouds.
Right.
Like I want to be opportunistic about the emergence of new and unique ways that we get to interact with the world and how fundamentally that makes us better at connecting with one another. Like that's my interest at the end of the day always. It's like if I can't translate this to a conversation between me and you, or not necessarily even a conversation, but just like an interaction between me and you, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't need to, I'm not one of those people that's sitting in my closet, meditating for hours on end.
Right.
And because, like there's something so much cooler out in there than there is between me and you right here. Like go fuck yourself.
Right.
Love all my meditators.
Yeah.
So
shout out to Nepal.
And I think that, there are people that are made and that do great work in that space and everything. I just think there's also a large community of pompous jackasses who live their lives in that. And I just can't interact with it.
Yeah.
So
monk LARPers.
Yeah. Yeah, unironically. So, it's a very convoluted answer, but my answer is that like I want to be attentive to an understanding of the newness with which the world is emerging from and really interact with it in meaningful ways. And I'm not entirely sure what that looks like, but it definitely looks like being open to more things.
Sure.
And exploring how they might work and like trying to put them into practice even if they don't, and moving on when they don't and just being okay with that. And at the end of the day, like I said, it's all in service for me of making the connection between me and the people that I love and this life that I live more meaningful, like just adding to the scale of that, the depth of that, well, so to speak.
Well, I think like something like that, like a something like that, if that's something that you really care about and that's something that like is important to you, that doesn't really care what technology is at. It doesn't care what society's at. It doesn't care whether we're living in holes in the ground because the earth is scorched nuclear wasteland and we have to live in the vaults or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you can, like, if that's something that you want to pursue, you can pursue that through in any circumstance, right?
Right.
And so I think, and if that's something that you want to pursue, that you'll be able to take advantage of whatever is given to you to do that. So if it's not in that scenario, and if it's in a scenario of, even more, utopian like society where everything's good and happy, you could still search for that, and you can still utilize the tools that you have at your means to do that. And I think that you'll be able to do them. So I guess for me, it's like more of a like that being like whatever your goal is, or whatever the thing that is important to you transcends whatever else is going on in the world.
Right.
And it doesn't really, however the world is at any given time doesn't really matter to that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
So would you say for you have a similar sentiment about the meaning with which you pursue life in that sense?
Yeah.
And what how would you describe that?
I would describe that in the sense of like being kind of like what we talked about last week, is being just like being the person that I want to be, and being able to stick to my values, and being able to stick to the things that I care about, and pay attention to the things that I care about. And if the world makes that easier, then good. Right. If the world makes it harder, well, then puts it to the test. Right. But okay, and so, for me, it's kind of like, like when we're talking about the apocalypse or the collapse of everything. It's like,
sure.
Yeah, that's a scary thought, right? Yeah. In that sense, but I'm not paralyzed by that fear. And I'm not paralyzed by the fear of, oh my goodness, that could happen at any moment. I have to be ready. I have to make sure that I have food, and I have to have water, and make sure my bunker's ready, and make sure there's no standing water in my bunker.
Yeah.
And it's still something that, it's like, it's something that I could think about, and something that would be kind of like make me nervous or whatever. And then I have to use faith in the sense of being like, well,
that's not in service to you pursuing your principle and values. And as much as it's not, it's not useful to interact with.
Right. It's not useful to interact with. And in the same direction, in the sense of like, it's, with, having kids and having a family, it's equally as scary looking to the future and seeing the way things are, and being like, are my kids going to be able to have real friends? Are they going to be required to be on a computer or some kind of device like that all the time? Are they going to be able to have
Zuckerberg thinks so.
Right. Are they going to be able to have real experiences and things like that? Those are scary thoughts too. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like, yeah, those are maybe things that I'll have to face at some point.
Yeah.
But I guess the best preparation I can make for that is the best preparation I can make for those kinds of things is just being honest, and being like being honest and being who I want to be now.
Yeah.
And then building that foundation. And then if things go in any kind of direction, I at least have a strong foundation of who I want to be, and how I want to be to when that time comes, then, and it gets tested or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I'm faced with that challenge, but otherwise.
Yeah. I think that there's something really pertinent there about the transcendence of the pursuit of the transcendence is often very I interact with a lot with the spiritual community that exists today, and it's a really interesting thing. It's a really interesting emergent property that's come out in the sense of like I'll give a hot take. Christianity is dying rapidly. At least Western Christianity, I should say. And I don't think it'll survive another generation. But
not unless there's collapse.
Yeah, and then people might return to the
No, they definitely would.
Faith.
It would definitely strengthen Christianity.
I think it would definitely strengthen spirituality. I don't know how much it would strengthen Christianity itself. Actually,
Christianity has a track record.
Actually, Christian, I will say that might work out for them.
The Dark Ages after the fall of Rome is one of the most Christian times in history.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of work put into making that the case.
Yeah, but I mean like that was one of the most Christian times, like for everyday people and their connection to the faith of Christianity. That would have been that was one of the most Christian times. That's when the emergence of so much Christian literature and Christian art and music and everything was born from that era.
That is true.
And that is one of the things that I do think about, like when I think of the like a collapse of society, like as a world society that we have now. Mm-hmm. If you compare that to the collapses of societies throughout history, it's terrible right when it happens, and it's pretty bad for a good number of years afterwards. But usually from that is usually when then you have amazing, incredible things.
Yeah.
Like if without the fall of Rome happening, then the strong emergence of Christianity in Europe and in the West, that then created one of the like most beautiful times in history as far as music and art and architecture. All of that is from the birth of coming out of those times. And it was like, hey, it was reaching that degree of like, hey, life is like getting easy and easier and easier enough that we can start embarking on these more like...
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like the through line is that like in times of deep darkness, people seek the light more than anything else. Right. And then when they find it, everybody gathers around it for a little while, and then it gets really bright. Yeah. And then they don't see the darkness coming forward.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Which is just another memey way to say
good times. Good times.
Yeah, create weak men. Weak men create hard times.
Right, but there's an element to that, and so like you think, okay, well, if the world collapsed as we know it, and maybe and if everything collapsed right now, and 200-300 years, that the things that emerge 200 years from now, 300 years from now, might be some of the greatest things that humans have ever done.
Yeah.
Like,
it is a weird thing to think about in that respect, which is to say, like, how connected are we to that future? Yeah. We tend to be really good about connecting to our children in the sense of understand. Well, I say that. Theoretically.
Does he like dinosaurs? I don't know. He's got a poster on his wall, but I don't know.
Theoretically, and usually parents are very good at connecting with their children and like being very attached to their future and the transcendent property that brings. I think that's changing a little bit in Western society for a little bit, but there's something really interesting there, which is to say that like we have this connection to that generally, and that seems to be getting severed a little bit, and I don't know how well that's reflected in history, in the sense of like I don't know if that's something that's happened in history before, and this is just kind of a reflection of that. But the point is to say, like, in the same way that I have a real sense of connection with the Greeks,
Yeah.
because of their exceptional impact on Western thought and culture. I wonder if it's possible and at all reasonable to have a strong sense of connection with the future.
Yeah.
And the societies that will come of age as a product of our contributions to the global history, global history.
Yeah.
And how to connect with that meaningfully I think it's a really important question.
I think it's the same thing. If you have a strong connection to your past, then you can have a strong connection to your future. Because like for me, like I can look at something like if the collapse of the United States or the world happened, that what emerges from that afterwards might be some of the greatest things that humans have ever done up to that point. Is then like it's like, yeah, sure, I won't live for that, but I wasn't alive for the things that happened before.
Right.
And I can still like look at how great that was and be like energized by the fact of like this like human greatness. And just as much as like our human potential that could come from that is.
Yeah, I the question at the forefront of my mind is very much like, I don't want to just be that moral relativist who sits there as the collapse of society, like as the nuke is falling on me, going like, "Oh, how great it'll be afterwards!" Right?
Yeah,
like,
no, yeah.
Again, with the conviction thing and pragmatism and wanting to really connect with this at a very real and deep level, my thing, and the reason why I articulated the way that I did about my practice in life to do my best to interact with this with this the changes of the world is, I don't want to just sit there and look at the world changing and be like, oh, look how much better it'll be in a few years.
Yeah.
I want to be fully cognizant, aware, and present in knowing that I'm my best self in this moment, so that people in their present then can be their best self.
Right.
And I'm not entirely sure what that looks like, regardless of any scenario, whether it's apocalyptic or utopic or whatever it is. But I do know, this is actually the second topic, which we never got to. I do know that it is answered by others in the question. And the question is this: what am I good at? And well, we won't get into it now because it'll take too long. But the it's not a perfect way to phrase it, but basically the sentiment there is like, if I asked you, someone who pays attention and knows me, and is attuned to the depth of the depth of relationship and capacity for human exceptionalism, in relationship especially, when I ask you that question, what gets wrapped up in it isn't like this nebulous series of things of like, oh, well, you're good at AV.
Right.
And you can fix a TV.
Right.
The nature of that question and what I'm really asking is, what do I have to contribute to the world? Like, how do I best serve your children? Like, what is it about me in particular that is capable of having a profound and realizing impact on the quality of your life and your children's life? And I feel like if you can take that seriously and you can have relationship around that, not only with yourself but with others, most especially, because otherwise it's very egotistical and
yeah.
you're just serving yourself. But truly honoring that in relationship and serving the best in each other and asking what the best in each other is and meaning it when you ask it is something that I have been, it's really been the ground at which this conversation has been taking place is just the seriousness with which I'm trying to take that.
Yeah.
While also not trying to be, I love life.
Right.
I love these conversations between you and I. I enjoy the simplicity of just having you come out for a couple hours a week.
Yeah.
And talking about the Matrix and how awesome it is.
Yeah.
Like that's all there, and I love it, and that's just as valuable to me.
Sure.
Because just in the same way I was saying, like you can't appreciate the Matrix unless you have the French Artour
right
in the 20s, figuring out how to splice film together.
Right.
The nature and the value of these conversations in their entirety in the context of making of the sausage of our lives and who we are, it's profoundly important. And I want to be grateful and more and more grateful for it every day. And I appreciate you. I appreciate that you're a gateway for that. You're an opportunity that you serve as a window for that into my life, in all respects.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Yeah, no, I mean absolutely, and I think that's one of those things as like and unfortunately, and. I say unfortunately, like it feels like those are one of those things that, like for me too, it's kind of like having being able to sit down and talk and being able to, shoot the shit and then, jump from topics and, from, talking about fucking Justin Timberlake movies to Cream Team or Squirt Squad to, having, deep, important conversations and things like that. That's incredibly valuable to me. And that's something that I really, really enjoy. And I'm always bummed out when it's like, or I feel like, man, I don't get to have those kind of conversations as much as I'd like to. I get to have those kind of conversations with you. I get to have those kind of conversations with my wife. And I get to have those kind of conversations with somebody else every now and then, once in a blue moon, once a fortnight. So, and then I'm always like, man, that's something that I want more of. And I don't know if that's, at, where I'm at in my life or whatever. That's something that I could, I don't know what I could do to make that happen more. And so, and I have like a, kind of like you said, like kind of like probably you feel like you wish you could have that experience with more people.
Yeah.
Because, and so it feels like it's unfortunate, but maybe, maybe it's not that unfortunate because maybe it is something that is incredibly rare. And
that's part of what makes it so special.
Right. And that's what makes it so special. If you got to have, deep, awesome conversations with everybody, you'd be like, all right, come on, let's have some small talk. Or, tell me about what you did this weekend. There's at least, come on.
Yeah.
So, but I think having like a thankfulness of it is important, and I think you should probably, I think having a thankfulness towards everything that you experience in your life is probably extremely important because everything is like a gift in a very cheesy way, but it's kind of true, as far as like your experiences go.
I do always like pointing out the acute nature of the word present also being used as a term for gift. Because I do think I mean I've definitely been at the stage that you're talking about where you're kind of like, I really wish I could have this all the time, right? And really feeling that sentiment. And there are still times where I'm like, damn, I really wish I could just talk to Alex about this right now.
Right.
Or anybody.
Or just anybody.
Or just anybody,
have,
really.
I have a lot of friends who, like, I have a lot of friends that I get together with and do things with. And, you know, we might be doing something and it might be fun and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I'm kind of like, man, I kind of just wish that we could, you know, just come over and hang out and sit down and we could just talk. Yeah. You know, and there's very, very few people that are actually open to that.
Yeah.
You know, if you can invite me over and say, hey, you just want to come hang out? Mm-hmm. And I'm down. You know, I know I could invite you over and be like, hey, you want to just come hang out? Yeah. And I've noticed that that's been kind of a problem because that's usually how I invite people over. Yeah. Is like I'll contact a couple or whatever and be like, hey, you guys want to come hang out? And for the most part, they're kind of like,
to do what?
To do what? And then you come over and then they come over and it's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna make dinner in a little bit and we're just gonna hang out and we're just hanging out, and not really doing anything. And they're kind of like,
what do you mean?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
I don't think there doesn't have to be an activity tied to everything that we do. Oh, that's gonna make me go off on a whole nother tangent. I think I know what that's from, but
do write that down because I do want to get into it. But yeah, I think
public school.
Oh gosh,
public school and making everything that has to be a damn activity. That is actually one of the things that I really enjoyed about homeschooling. Looking back on it, is homeschooling because the parents, having your kids at home all the time and being by yourself, because you don't live in a village, where all the kids get to run around together and everybody takes care of them because you live in your secluded house in suburbia. So the parents get fucking tired of their kids and they schedule shit on, Friday morning so that they just go to the park and all the kids can just be together and there's no planned activities. Me as a kid, I loved it because activities and all that kind of stuff generally weren't that fun for me, because there's this stupid shit, it's like, oh, we're going to do this. That's not that fun for me. What was fun for me is just being around a bunch of other people, a bunch of other kids my age or whatever, and just hanging out and seeing what they're interested in and talking and oh, you like to play guitar? Let's play guitar together. Oh, we're drawing pictures. Let's draw pictures or whatever. Oh, what are you reading? Those kind of conversations. I loved it. And looking back on it, like that's, one of the things that I really, really enjoyed was that where all the public school kids, because I had a lot of public school friends, everything they fucking did had to be some activity attached to it because if the parents wouldn't sign off on that kind of shit, be like,
I will say, in defense of public school and parents everywhere, off the back of that rant,
I had to get off my chest.
I think that something you should that would be useful for you is to recognize that's very rare.
Yeah, no, I definitely do.
Most people are. I'm gonna use this term, and I don't mean it in a woo woo way. But you're a very open person.
Yeah,
and what that means fundamentally is that you are. Let me figure out a different way to phrase that. I was gonna say you're looking for ways for people to fill you all the time.
Yeah, but it's true. Little hoe,
cream team, or
cream team.
But yeah, something to that effect, which is to say that like because you're open, you're like one of the ways that you find fulfillment in relationship is by having other people who are not open, but rather closed in certain ways.
Yeah.
Like I think a perfect example of this is the way that you described us meeting.
Yeah.
And how you got me to rant on on local politics and the things that I had been reading about. Like that was your way of finding a port.
Yeah.
For you to like interact with and see like, oh wait, that's like a concentrated thing that I can like that I'm open to.
Yeah.
So with regard to the thing about hanging out, first of all, recognize your uniqueness in that. Like it's a rare trait. Most people aren't that way. And then secondly, like I'm the same way. You know what I did? This is how I fooled the system. Okay, is that I get my friends together to play social deduction games.
Yeah,
and that's the closest thing that I have found to like a fulfilling experience in the things that we're talking about because it's so close.
Yeah,
it's just formatted into a game, and that's why we started playing Blood on the Clock Tower. We just recently played last week.
Yeah,
and it's my favorite thing ever now. It's like we used to play all kinds of social deduction games, Secret Hitler, like One Night Ultimate Werewolf, and different ones. And Blood on the Clock Tower has like far exceeded my expectations for being able to produce that exact effect. Because I have also
I know that's what you're doing, and in the first couple times that like we've hung out with everybody and then playing the games, and it was like it's always my first response in my head. I'm like, I don't want to play a game. I just want to hang out, right? Yeah. And then when it gets starting, and then the games that you pick and we play, and the way that it goes, I'm like, oh, okay. That's what these games. That's okay. That's what's going on. But my first response is like, oh, I don't want to.
Do we have to play a game?
I don't want to do the game.
Yeah, because only every once in a while, like I think the last time we played a game, like it was on my birthday. I think it was. I have a few games that are specifically built around having meaningful conversations. Yeah. So there's like one called "We're Not Really Strangers." Yeah. There's another one. I just bought one from Esther Pearl, who is a therapist of some kind, specializing in sex therapy, I guess. Whatever. But she has a intimacy like conversational game
that you play with others.
Yeah, it's like it's couple based. You can play with just your spouse, but like I have a few of those games.
What does this card say?
I have a few games like that, but people don't want to play them because they're immediately kind of like, this is kind of lame, or whatever. Like you need to have the best way that I found to do it, and I used to be able to do this with my college friends.
You need to do a D&D.
Oh yeah,
you would love it.
Oh, I've played D&D. Okay. Yeah, I have. It's a ton of fun.
It brings out.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it's really good at that too.
It cuts right to the core of the people.
Yeah.
Too. You immediately know who's who.
Yeah.
When you're like, especially like you're like, all right, being a little hoe in this game. What's going on here?
Yeah. No, it's really good for that too. D&D is just it's a tough commitment thing because there's a lot of elements that you have to like
get into
learn and interact with. I've done one shots before. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're a ton of fun too. But for other people that haven't played D&D, it's a big commitment. Like it's a big thing.
Yeah,
to get
if
them
you're not. I usually say like if the hardest part with D&D is just getting somebody to like open up to it. I know the first time that I played, I was kind of hyped. I was like, oh, we're playing D&D? Oh, okay, cool. Like we were getting together to play D&D at our friend's house. And then when I saw the shit, I was like, wait, it's in my imagination? What the fuck?
Yeah.
I was like, I had people hyping this shit up, talking about all this cool ass shit. I was like, this is in my head? What the fuck?
No, yeah, it's
But once I got past that and started playing it, I was like, all right, I'm in there.
Yeah, that's why like I said, I really like social deduction games. And one of the secrets I've used to like get to those kind of like better conversation games, generally is to open up with simpler games like that or others. Even something as simple as Monopoly or whatever, and then
I hate Monopoly.
Yeah, it's rough, but you But then after you're done
cheating.
playing that, then you can introduce like another game.
Yeah.
And it's like a conversational game or whatever, and people are into it. And especially because it's later on in the night, people might have been drinking, stuff like that. It used to work really well for my college friends.
Oh yeah. I still when you get together, the great debate. Was that Alexandria's birthday?
The great debate.
Of
Are you
flirting.
You're talking about
cheating.
hot takes, yeah.
Was flirting
That
cheating?
was a game.
That was a heated debate.
That was a game we got for Alexandria's birthday the year before.
Oh yeah,
it was 2022.
That got heated.
That got real heated. We have not played that game since.
The room was divided.
The room was divided. I will say the fact that the longest married couple in the room, agreed with that flirting is not cheating. Like I was kind of like, all right, listen. I will say now, to be fair, especially if Jordan ever listens to this, everyone has personal boundaries and lines in relationships that are extraordinarily important.
Yes.
Only ever when it feels like a violation to your partner is that a problem.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of people's relationships, including his, that's not a boundary either of them feel like they're having to violate because they want in any way to participate in that. Jordan is the furthest thing from a flirtatious person you'll probably ever meet in your life.
Yeah. Because he's autistic.
You don't. I'm gonna have to remove that. Anyway,
that's not a bad thing. That's not an insult.
Anyway, then
she got a little bit of the tism. That's all. That's okay.
So social rejection kit, which I will say, if you recall, the three things that I was telling you that like you need
me and my
do.
wife got in a big debate after that one too. 'Cause she wasn't there for it.
Oh, the cheating. Oh, yeah, that's right. She wasn't
there.
Forgot.
I was just me, and then I came home and I was telling her about it, and then me and her got into a big discussion about it.
Wow, that's crazy. I was gonna say that is one of the things that once you get your own relationship sorted out and you start hanging out with your wife more frequently, which I am also guilty of. We haven't been going as many days as we should be, but
and I was going to say that too because
I'll invite both of y'all.
Because we that'll be good because then we do double because then it gives a little more incentive to like when we have other people we're like, hey, we're getting together. But one thing that me and my wife do so because we don't go on dates one-on-one like away from the house very often.
Sure.
But me and my wife do spend a lot of time together one-on-one. And just shoot the shit and just talk about random shit. Which,
that is important.
There's, a lot of times the kids go to bed and then me and my wife are up for an hour or two just hanging out.
Yeah.
Or the kids are watching a movie or something and me and my wife are hanging out. So me and my wife do hang out a lot and talk more so than I see some other couples do.
Yeah, no, I think that's exceptionally important. But I was more so getting on your case because I do think there's also something very important about making a
conscious effort,
making a real effort to do something that's like very specific between the two of you and like an effort on that front.
Yeah.
Stereotypically speaking, it matters a lot more to women too.
Yeah.
Because we're the kind of people that would. Like for me, quality time is my love language, is my primary love language, and so like I don't need to go on a date. I don't need to go on a date in order to really feel like I've connected with someone.
Yeah.
But when I put the effort and intention into really setting up the circumstance, where that time is high quality, from their perspective, it's even better for me too.
Yeah.
I just need to be able to make that effort and connection.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the future, we'll invite you guys. And even Jordan is open to like we have no stop. Stop it.
Sorry.
You're trying you're sabotaging this whole charade. We have a trip coming up to Fredericksburg with the two couples.
What's in Fredericksburg?
The wineries.
Fred.
It's an old German town, so it's very there's a lot of Germanic
Frederick Schulenberg.
Stuff. And
so the kolache.
So we're the six of us. The six of us are going up there, and hanging out, and the crazy part about it was while we're planning this, Jordan asked, which is exceptionally rare or very strange. It's very like different for Jordan. He was like, who else could we invite?
Yeah.
Because we've been a very tight knit group for many years.
So he's open.
So just saying, there's slots available. I know you're.
Are you inviting me?
Not this time because our Airbnb is already booked. But
that was a lot of pressure.
No. And I know you have kids, so you need a lot of time in advance.
And it's overnight and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like a whole weekend.
Yeah, the kids aren't old enough for that yet.
Yeah, so it's very difficult to get that all arranged.
Yeah.
But no, the point of that whole charade was to say, I think we're both kind of exceptionally rare in a lot of those ways. You most especially, and I have just found better strategies for getting as close to what I want as possible.
Yeah. That's good.
And the whole crux of all of that was to say, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
You're a good conversationalist and an even better friend.
Ooh.
And
that's a lot.
We are way over time.
I
really have to pee.
It is my bedtime, and I have to pee too. My wife is over at, it's her dad's birthday. She's over there. She's picking up her sister. Her little sister is staying over till Sunday.
Nice.
So she's picking her up. She has a car. She has a nice car. We gave her a car, and she got another car. She doesn't want to drive up to the Woodlands because she's scared of the highway.
This girl lives in Houston?
Sure.
Where does she work?
HEB. Over by her house.
Why does she have a nice car?
Well, nice by my standards.
What is it?
It's like a Toyota Camry.
What year?
Like 2015 or something like that.
Yeah, that's a nice car.
Yeah, that's a nice ass car. That's what I thought.
That's a really nice car. Why the fuck do you need that to drive to HEB? How do you afford that on an HEB salary?
HEB pays pretty well.
I guess it depends on what you do, yeah.
Yeah, HEB pays they pay pretty good. And
I guess in Sugarland too, especially,
yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the pay in Fredericksburg HEB is.
Well, it's
they pay them in
like
francs.
I think I remember when we went to Austin. Yeah, when we went to Austin and HEB was advertising like 18 an hour starting for cashiers. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, but that's Austin.
Yeah,
I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine the people they have to go through to hire somebody at HEB.
Yeah.
You know, in Austin, it's like college kids, you know?
Yeah.
In Austin. They're probably
all right.
They're probably like $18 an hour.
All right, let's not alienate any more people than we have today. Okay, we got nurses out. We got all kinds of
$18 an hour. Oh my god, $18 an hour.